Right, we have a new kit to put together. It's the omsonic transistor ladder filter. So we have the front panel, ribbon cable, printed circuit board, 3 bags of components, and also 4 pot knob tops. I've already downloaded, printed the PDF guide, which has got some friendly assistance there in identifying all the components. I've previously been through all of my components against the build notes, checked everything. There is actually one difference from the build notes that I found, but yeah, the other pages with hints and guides to getting all the orientations correct, and also the Tempco resistor, how to bond that. Also the calibration and trimming of the pot. Now in this build guide it states 463 nanofarad film caps. I've had a look at the build guide that I downloaded and against the components I've got, and the components are 68 or roughly 68, and I've checked and there's a slight difference in the build guide. So for this I'm using the 68 NF film caps as opposed to the 63 NF. That was the only difference I found in the kit I've got and on the bill of materials. I assume, seeing as the bags are labelled A, B and C, that we start with bag A. I've already started checking all the components, so I don't have to do it during the build. All these components I've labelled just with a little bit of tape, double checked them with a couple of bits of kit, because I've got one of these handy pieces of equipment now. There's a lot of them around, various different builds and all the rest of it, and basically it's just got a clamp that you put components into the top, gives you a reading, orientation for diodes, resistor values, even variable resistors, etc, trim pots and stuff like that. It's very, very automatic, and they're very, very cheap. I'd advise anyone who's new to kind of building kits and all the rest of it, for identifying components, this bit of kit is the best thing you can buy for your money. I think I paid about £8, £7, something like that. I've seen a lot of people talking about these on forums. I don't know what they're called. I'll put some information in the comments to link you up to this device, because it's a lot cheaper than a big multimeter, or good quality multimeter, which also I have actually purchased as well. I've gone for a Unity, and it's great actually. It's got an attachment that goes on the front. You can drop your components in and test stuff, but that's a bit more expensive than the simple device. So I've been through all the components. I've marked them up. I've taped things up, grouped them up, so I don't have to identify anything during the build. It's all there, ready to use. We have the PDF guide. I've got a printed version here, so I can go through, follow it along. So let's start, shall we? So all the resistors are listed with pictures and identifying marks. So if we start with the bigger numbers, so 200k, we've got some 200k, got some 100ks. Let's grab the hundreds because they're at the top there. Let's grab the next 200k. Actually, I've identified them wrong. I think they're 200k or 200R. Let me double check the notes. They're 200R, not 200k. Right, let's move on to the next components. What have we got? 456k or 1k. Start with the 1ks. quite busy on that board, but we'll put another 4 in, then we'll solder them. So they're 56k. We'll clean that up a bit. Oh, we missed one. Next, let's move on to more resistors. We've got 330Rs. Now we have 68Rs, oh no, 68K. Next up we've got 6.8K, 2 of those. Also have a 4.7K. We have the Tempco 1K resistor left, but that is to be treated separately. So let's solder those down. Clean those up a little bit. Couple there that we couldn't get to because of the clamp. We're ready for the next components. Right, so let's move on to some of these other components that are in bag A. We got 100 NF capacitors. These are all ceramic, so polarity shouldn't be an issue. Oh, we got one there. Moving on, we have a single 100 PF. Now I've noticed that I've actually put one of the 100 NFs in the 100 PF slot. It's always worth just double checking. If you have a look and you think, hang on a minute, I spotted that, another 100 NF slot, and I thought, well, I haven't got any more of them left, so I must have done something wrong. So that one is what 100 NF, so we'll double check all them. That's 100 NF, same there. That one's 100 NF and that one's 100 NF. So this one, which is the 100 PF, goes there. So easy to make mistakes. Like if you hit a problem and you think, hang on a minute, I've got 5 of these and I've just found 6 slots. You must have done something wrong. So next up we have a single 220 UF. One here, got the plus there, which is the longer leg. And then next we have 5 10 UF. Clean those up a bit. Last of all, we have the 4 box capacitors. So we'll solder those in, and then I think this bag is pretty much done, because in the instructions it says do not solder in the Tempco resistor. And looking further on in the instructions, that's because you have to couple it to another component for the temperature bonding. From my understanding, a Tempco resistor basically changes impedance according to temperature, so it counter reacts temperature change in other components. I don't know the specifics, but I think that's the overall thing of a Tempco resistor. I think they're also classed as thermistors, or Tempco resistors are part of the thermistor family. I might be wrong, but from what I've read so far, that seems to be the situation. So we'll clean that up. So now all we have left over is the 1K Tempco resistor, which we shall put to one side. And now we need to open bag B. Yeah, in the instructions it states that do not place the Tempco resistor till I say so. So we'll put that to one side, and on the next set of instructions we are on to BC549 NPN transistors. Actually, no, I'm wrong. They're on the next step. These are the BC549s, and we just have to make sure we get these in the right direction. some of you might have noticed if you've seen some of my old, my other build videos. I now have this red sheet, which is actually a mat, anti-static mat, that's plugged into the earth in the mains. It also has a hand strap, but I have a spare lead here that's grounded, so I always just grab a little bit of that when I need it. So we are placing all of these along here. It'd be pretty push to get the orientation wrong because it's printed on the silk screen. Yeah, I didn't even need to bend them legs, so they just sit perfect as they are. So all of them in the same orientation. And so what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to grab a little bit of masking tape and just take them down so they all sit roughly level. You can see through the masking tape that they all sit fairly level, and then we'll put them, solder them in place. The reason I'm doing that is because each one's got 3 legs and it's quite hard to hold them in place while you bend the legs, so if you can just hold them in place with a bit of tape, go around and tack them in. Go through and clean all those up. That's kept them fairly nice and straight. So next up we have these, which are NPN transistor modules. It says make sure they're inserted the right way, with pin 1 as indicated by an arrow and semicircle on the PCB matching up with the semicircle on the transistor model. So on these we've got all the semicircles in the bottom right hand corner, and on here we have one there, yeah, let's start with these. So on here we've got the semicircle up there. Here we have the semicircle in that direction. Now to hold these in place, I'll just use another bit of tape. So that should be enough to hold them in place. Just get some corner pins done. Next up we have 2 TL 084s. Now there's no chip sockets for these, it's just chips. I'm actually going to go and get some sockets to put these in, just because it's easier if you know, you do have problems. So I've got a couple of IC sockets that we can solder on the board rather than soldering the chip straight onto the board. Now these are actually 2 legs too large. Although you can see there's an extra row of legs. Now you've got 2 options. You can actually remove individual pins. If you get a pair of pliers, be like this, hold one leg very carefully like this, push it in, and it will actually, if you don't twist, if you don't fold it, you can actually get the pin to come out like that. and you can simply take the pin out, do the same there, and then just ignore that and kind of, you know, overlap it. Now I'm not going to do that. What I do is I actually get a fairly sharp blade and I just cut the end off and leave a thin sliver left over. So what you can do is take the pins out first if you want. I normally keep these pins spare in a little bag. You know, if you really mess them up, you can take one out and replace it. They're quite easy to sort out. So we got to lose one row of legs. So we need to do it, well, you don't have to, but I do it at the opposite end of the cutout on the chip, so this end. So obviously I've already actually taken one out of that end, so I need to put one back in. They're quite bendy. It's really easy to bend these things too far, so you have to be very careful and very gentle with these. Just, you know, just tuck them in, not too aggressive. Now what I'm going to do is get a blade. In this instance, you could insert it and just leave that overlapping in space on the PCB, but there's a component there, and on this side we might get away with it on this one. Let's see if make sure all these legs are straight. For that one we can actually get away with that because there's enough space at the end for a blank. Just need to be careful when you push the chip in, you don't go down here and crush the legs up. Push that back in. In fact, I'll do that with that. Just bend these end pins over to hold it in place. Do. Leave the M1 just to make sure and push this one in. That should be enough just to hold that in place. Now for this one, I'm going to actually cut that off because there's not enough space to do that at that end of the PCB because there's a small capacitor there in the way. So again, I'm just going to take these pins out so I'll keep them spare in a little bag. They don't get crushed when I try and cut the plastic. I'll just slowly push them out. Cut the spare pins for later. So now we've got an empty space at that end. So I'm going to get what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a blade. I'm going to cut down. I can sit this side onto the table. All I'm going to do is try and cut there and leave a tiny sliver of plastic. Just hold that end together while I solder it. I'm going to cut down there just to shorten it down a little bit. And when you cut this, when you start off, just rock the knife backwards and forwards. Don't push too hard because it can be quite brittle. So what I've done is cut that little sliver off the end, just up to where like the holes are for those set of pins. And then it always kind of tapers off, and then just clean that up a little bit and do the same. Just rock backwards and forwards and just shave that end part off so we've got enough room to fit this in. So that should fit in, hopefully. It's still a little bit tight against that capacitor, so I'm going to shave a tiny bit more off. Still quite tight against that capacitor. Need a tiny little bit of space to fit this in. Make sure these are all straight. And then we solder that lot in. I always go for the corners first. So we can put them chips in now. Make sure we get the orientation right. The chip cut out in this direction. Don't forget this one's got the extra row, so make sure we don't go in the wrong slots and mess the chip legs up. So up next we have 2 trimmers and a header for the power. Solder those in. Next we have the power header. So next we have the final bag. And also we have the Temco resistor as well. So in the instructions, right, the Temco resistor straddles over this. And in the instructions, it's over that small, what is it, an NPN transistor. And also they say that you can actually add a little bit of hot glue. I might actually do the hot glue as well, because it will just add to the heat transfer across it. Let's feed it in. Which one is it? This end. And it straddles over the top and sits on top of that tiny mounted component up there. I think you just hold it in place, bend it out. Hopefully that's firmly there. So we'll solder that in. And that's the Temco resistor in. So now we have all of the hardware to go in. Now with the pots, there is one different one. And they're all 100 apart from one, which is a 20k. So just make sure we get that in the right place. So it's an A50k or a B20k. We also have audio jacks. Oh, actually on the reverse. Then we can get the base plate. If it's not fitting in, just give everything a bit of a wiggle, make sure it all sits in. Let's stick the nuts on here. Hopefully we can hold it on in place while we solder them parts in. All seems to marry up very, very nicely. Doing it all finger tight. So we solder the pots in first. You should be able to flip the board over and do the sockets. So we are all done. All of the pots are soldered in place. All of the sockets are now soldered in place. I'm going to just go around the whole board with a jeweler's loop just to make sure everything looks good. And then we are ready to calibrate, and I need to read the instructions a bit on the calibration. Right, so we're going to test this unit. I've calibrated the unit according to the instructions. So basically the rough calibration, so you set the blue freak int trimmer to the center and turn the grey voltage octave trimmer all the way to one end, turn it 25 times and then 15 times in the opposite direction to the center it. I put the multimeter onto that. It's 10k trimmer, so it roughly worked out about 5k, so I trimmed that as well, and I'm going with that. I'm not going with the full in-depth CV source 1 volt kind of setup. So let's see what it sounds like, shall we? We've got an amplifier on the end of this, so we use a previously built unit from earlier. Let's stick the amp into the new filter that we've built. Let's stick that square wave output into the input. Let's see what happens. Let's turn it up. We've got nothing. On the frequency we've got something. So we've got things going on. All sounds nice. Oh, I like that. Bit of self-oscillation. Similar to the Polivox VCF that I've got already. Well, that sounds sweet. So, let's test the other inputs. Let's do CV. And what I'm going to use for that is this little homemade thing I made the other day, which is just pretty basic, to be honest. Let's bring the CV up. Well, the CV input works. And we've also got a volt octave input as well, so we might as well use that. Let's stick that into another spare little square wave. That seems to be working. Sounds lovely.